In this episode, I'm joined by our CrossFit ambassador, André, who's a rising star in arguably one of the fastest growing sports at the moment. I spoke to André ahead of the start of the new season, and we discussed his training in Denmark and the key role that nutrition plays within that. What's very obvious to see, though, is André's drive, determination, and sheer self-belief to be the best that he possibly can be, and fundamentally what he believes he needs to do to achieve those goals, both within his coaching and his competing. Welcome back to the next in our series of Meet the Ambassadors. We're joined today by CrossFit champion Andrè Houdet. Great to have you on board with us, André.
Thanks for having me.
So it'd be great just to give everyone a little bit of an insight into your life and what I presume is obviously becoming a very fast-growing sport, which is obviously CrossFit. Seeing where you started out, your career, and how things are going for you, obviously over in Denmark. So how is everything? Obviously, the world that we're living in at the moment with COVID. What's it like over there?
I mean, the gyms are closed, but I'm lucky to have my own training facility at my house. I live I've lived in a lot of big cities around the world, but now I've moved out to the countryside here in Denmark, and me and my fiance, we've set up a quite big training facility that's like 95 square meters, and like that I can train full time. So luckily it hasn't influenced me much with the COVID situation, but in Denmark it has been like all gyms have been closed and are still closed until further notice, like April, maybe even longer. But I mean, I think the CrossFit community have done quite well in this space, and you know, CrossFit is essentially just functional training, high intensity, mixed modal, and that doesn't need to involve 1,000 things. You can run and do burpees and push-ups and air squats, and if you have one piece of dumbbell, you can really do quite a lot. So I think, despite all, it has been quite a positive and good phase for most people, even though it's not optimal, but people have been able to get through it and still work on a lot of good things. So I'm positive.
Yeah, and looks like there's plans for the gym to grow a little bit from what we've seen on social media.
Yeah, we have a lot of space out here. Like when you move far away, then you know it's like 1 hour from the city center, so it's not too bad. And so we have like another room that's about 70 square meters. That's right next to it. It's like just an extension with a small wall that's a separator. So we're definitely planning on expanding the gym. And I mean, next to training, I do coach quite a bit, and I have some clients. And I mean, the future, once I retire one day, maybe like in 7, 8, 9 years from now, then I would like to coach full time and have some athletes on site. And we're also planning on building like a guest house in the back where athletes can potentially rent, you know, the space for 3 months at a time leading up to a competition, and they can be a little bit isolated out in the countryside and just, you know, relax and train and go for long walks and not really have any distractions that you usually have when you live in a city or you're close to your family and friends or you're busy. And so I mean, we have a good sponsorship with an equipment company, and they're helping me out quite a lot. So I'm really thankful that it's possible, and it's a long-term dream, but it's possible. So
yeah, and that coaching is the coaching something that you've always wanted to do alongside competing as well, or was that something that you picked up along the way?
It was a little bit something I discovered when I started CrossFit. I always wanted to be a pro athlete. I didn't really know in what. I mean, I had some different like ambitions in different sports, but I never really thought I was going to coach. I mean, I always liked doing some. I was always really into hospitality. I come from a hospitality family where my parents have had Michelin restaurant and have been in the hospitality and hotel world, and I've sort of grown up in that. So I always thought that was going to be, you know, what I was going to do. But I discovered I actually moved to France after school because I'm half French, and my parents would like for me to learn better French, so they sent me off to Paris, and I think that's where I discovered that I really loved coaching. And I also think I realized that it was possible to make a living off being a coach, because in Denmark and perhaps in Scandinavia, it's not really, or maybe in the past, it's not been seen as a real career and more something you do part-time job while you're studying or you're in between jobs, and so it's always been difficult to see that it's actually a proper job. But when I lived in Paris, there was a lot of like 30 to 40 to even 45-year-old coaches that were doing it for a living and being super successful, and it was a super well respected job. And I think that just opened my eyes up to, that's a proper job. And yeah, and back then I was like 20 years old and super into like Alan Watts, and he always used to say, like, if you do something good, like if you're good at what you do, you'll always be able to make a living off it. And yeah, what will you do if money wasn't a thing? And
Yeah.
and I think that just guided me into it. And I come from a family of entrepreneurs and super driven people, and so I always knew that whatever I want to do, it will work out. If I want to be a barista, if I want to be a coach, or it doesn't really matter. If you're passionate about what you do and you work hard, you'll be able to make a good living off it.
Yeah. So would you say it was probably your time in France where you really sort of settled in terms of wanting to do CrossFit more? Like you touched on there, obviously wanted to be a pro athlete in whatever that may be, but was it your time in France which confirmed that was then going to be CrossFit?
Yeah, 100%. Like I had a few exposure to it before. It never really I never really was too much into it before. We did it as like off-season training when I did like grappling and wrestling and American football. I always loved the off-season training, but I wasn't too sure about the CrossFit thing. Also, because 2014 it still wasn't like as big as it is now, and I perhaps couldn't really see what it could lead to. But as I was getting 20 years old, and in sports that's already a little bit old. Like you have to choose what are you gonna do. But this sport just kind of gave me a second chance, and I had a good background, and I had a pretty good baseline to start with, and I was luckily encouraged by a lot of people who just told me that if I work hard, I can really become something. And literally from that day on, I haven't partied ever since.
Yeah.
Not that I was a party animal before, but like since that day, I forgot about everything else, and it was I want to become a tank in this.
So that determination, obviously, that you said is instilled from your family, but also self-driven as well, is what you think is going to get you right to the very top.
Yeah, I think I think your past obviously shapes you, and your environment, and when I grew up, my sister, she's born with muscular dystrophy, so she sits in a wheelchair and is very physically limited, not mentally. Just she's just a grown up with only powers of a newborn, so she can't walk and those kind of things. So and I was the closest brother to her, so I always had to be physically fit to carry her, and I think that just made me very aware of how grateful I should be for my own physical abilities. And I think when you see stuff like that when you grow up, you just it just shapes you. You become more driven, and she's always been like an absolute killer. Like she's only 22 years old and 23, and she's about to publish a book. She is almost finishing her bachelor in the hardest psychology study in Denmark, and and she has muscular dystrophy, and there's absolutely nobody with her sickness who actually goes to university.
Really?
Yeah, and my family, they've had a Michelin restaurant for 15 years that was named after my brother and I. My dad is what can you call, like the mentor of the guy who runs Noma, which is ranked as the #1 restaurant in the world. And so it's not to brag about my family at all, but I just think it's like I lost my brother in 2015 in an accident. He was in an accident, and I just think like when you have a lot of tough things in your life, like my sister has almost died 10 times since I grew up, and I've had Christmas in the hospital several times with her, and I just think it just shapes you. It makes you cut the bullshit, and you people you don't need, you cut off, and you what you really want, and you just go for it, and nothing can stop you. And I think that's perhaps something I've always had in me, but I think when you experience difficulties in your life, then those just they're just reinforced, and so that really drives me today, and just always has been. And I think it's just it would drive me regardless what I would do, whether it be CrossFit or coaching or doing the dishes or whatever. It's just like I just take things very serious because I know how precious life is and how fragile it is and how, yeah, like I think like what I've discovered, and this is like kind of deep, like, but it's like there isn't any fairness in the world. That's something we have made up to create hope, right? And I think I'm very attractive to sports because sports in the end of the day somehow a little bit the battle between the good and the evil. It's the battle between hard work must pay off. It's why people love watching sports, because they love watching somebody work hard and win, and also because it's one of the few tangibles in the world. The rest is the rest we never know, you know, like. So I think that's just one thing that I like, that measurement. I can measure progress here, and I know there's so many things in life that will just happen and continue to happen, but in sports at least it's a bit more in our control. And yeah, and I hope that people that follow me, and not that they can find my story inspiring, but more that they maybe can wake something up in themselves about, like, hard work will pay off, and I hope that my hard work will.
Yeah. No, I mean, amazing backstory, and obviously so many what sounds like ups and downs in terms of, it's certainly not bragging about your family, that it's worked incredibly hard to achieve what they have, and but also, yeah, the downsides of that in terms of obviously your brother and obviously the situation with your sister, but certainly not putting any limitations on what anyone can do. And I think that's just testament to your mindset, and obviously the mindset of your family. It all seems as though you're all pulling in the same direction, and all share that inner drive to accomplish whatever you set out to do. So I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I at least hope that, you know, it's all gonna work out, and at least you do your best, and that's all you can do.
Yeah, and with that, in terms of not necessarily shaping how you coach, but I'm presuming your experiences and how you say obviously it has shaped you is a big part of how you coach as well as you compete.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I take my job very serious, and I've actually done online coaching all the way since like 2015, and and yeah, I think back then a lot of people always used to tell me, you know, like, oh, how can you coach people? You don't know this, or you don't have a course in this. And it always never hit me like that. I didn't really know these things. I just kind of jumped in with both feet, and, you know, you do your best, and if clients are not happy or they're not progressing, and, you know, I'll be the first ones to tell them that maybe I'm not good enough. But yeah, I think I'm very passionate about coaching, and I think that's something you can't really hide either. That's the kind of job that you either love or you don't love. Like, you can't really, you can see in someone if they like coaching. You know, if you like to get up. I mean, now I don't coach a lot of like one-to-one at all. I actually don't coach any one-to-one. It's all online. But I used to thousands of hours of that, and if you don't love doing it, you can't get up at 4:30 to open the gym and coach 4 hours at minimum wage. You know,
Yeah.
and then do it again in the night, and your schedule is just messed up, and you have no holidays, and like you have to freaking love that, to be able to pull it through. So
Yeah.
definitely, yeah.
And in terms of the competing, as we touched on before, so obviously with your time in France is where it really started in terms of your love for CrossFit and really pursuing things with that. What was your sort of your first major competition or your first breakthrough where you thought, I'm pretty good at this, and obviously then the drive to continue doing it. What was that first thing that really started it off for you?
My first year of CrossFit, I qualified for this competition in England, in Manchester, called the Athlete Games. And back then that was a huge competition. But that year they took 100 athletes in, and I managed to qualify as like number 101. So one person didn't show up, so I got a ticket. And I think, you know, I finished only 77th, and I got absolutely my butt kicked. And but I think I also just realized, you know, oh wow, these guys are, you know, they're human. Like, if I work hard, for sure I can get to that level. And then the year after, I had like, I think my first real breakthrough. I finished third in a very large competition called French Throwdown. which is now like one of the major events of the season, and that was a complete shocker. Like I had no clue that I could do that, and nobody had a clue that was possible. So I think that just opened our eyes, and I say our eyes because my fiance, she's kind of been with me since day one with CrossFit, and always helped me out from the start. So yeah, I think we just realized, it's possible. And on the way, I've had a few different coaches, and they always had this belief in me somehow. And I don't know if that was, if it's, I would assume it's genuine, and you don't tell anyone you think they can make it to the top if you don't, or at least don't hope so. But that definitely also just helped me. But I think that like 2016 was a breakthrough, and then I've just been slowly stepping up like every year. And I've had some pretty serious injuries that with my elbows that have been like a little bit hindering, but I think overall, like, it's been stepping up every year. And I mean, every year on the leaderboard, I've been able to increase my placement. And last year was my best year. I finished 61 in the Worldwide Open, and I've had some pretty close competitions of getting like a games ticket, and I really hope to make it this year, even though like the European region in CrossFit is this year going to be absolutely crazy. And I actually especially think because of COVID, it will be even harder, because people have really had a long time to prepare this time. There hasn't been any competitions and distractions. Most athletes, they either have the key for their own gym, or they have a big home gym, or they know someone, so now they've just been off work and just training full time for 1.5 years. So the season starts on Friday the 12th.
Yeah.
And the season has a 4-stage format, which is the first stage is 3 weeks, called the CrossFit Open. And the world is sort of divided into continentals, and that's kind of how they divide the world, or regions. And the European region, from the European region, 10% will advance after the 3 weeks of the CrossFit Open. So that's quite a bit. There's like 50,000 males in that category. So we'll be advancing 5,000 onto something they call the quarterfinals. And in the quarterfinals, that will be like a 4 or 5 day competition where only top 60 will advance out of those 5,000. And they will advance to one of two semifinal competitions, either in Germany or in Holland. And so they will be separated 30 in each. And top 5 from each of those competitions will then make it to the finale, which is the CrossFit Games in the States.
Right.
If you are in 6th, 7th, or 8th place, or 3 places out, you will be invited to something called the wildcard round, which is another online competition, and their top 2 will go. So so it's going to be a super exciting season. And I mean, I'm still just nobody in this sport, and I really hope that this year I can, put my foot down and take what I want. And I really hope it goes.
Yeah. And do you think that obviously there's been a lot of documentaries around CrossFit that have obviously been circulating on Netflix and whatnot. Do you think that the popularity of the sport has spiked dramatically recently? Have you sort of picked up on that trend from when you started to where it is now?
100%. They also just changed the leadership. There've been quite like a lot of scandals with the former owner of CrossFit, and that was really like groundbreaking for the sport, as the company was bought by someone else who is sort of quite a role model in the sport, and has changed it back to all the successful things that it used to do, and has managed to propel it really in a good sense. They also changed the main sponsor of the CrossFit Games event. They managed to kind of separate the sport versus the lifestyle, which has kind of been a little bit the problem in the past. And so that's super good. I mean, and I think the sport will massively continue to grow, because it's just a sport that's all inclusive. Everyone can compete, everyone can do it. it's a sport that just takes focus away from trying to get a six pack and like big arms, and instead focus on like teaching you to have fun with training and challenges you in different ways, and then you get that other side too. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
instead of going on the weight every night and looking in the mirror, you just, you know, you're learning to do handstand holds, and you're learning to do more pull-ups, and you're rowing and you're doing stuff, and all of a sudden you look at like, wow, okay, I've actually lost 20 pounds, but without focusing on that. I think that's like the big issue in the fitness industry, is that we're so focused on aesthetics, and I completely get that it's nice to have good aesthetics, and that's a good goal, but I think it should just be a goal that happens in the background while you're focusing on, you know, you can run further, or you can jump higher, or you can lift a bit heavier, plus you're having a great time doing it.
Yeah.
So I definitely think that the sport is going to continue to grow, and I hope so also, so the athletes can, you know, get a salary and train full time. And there is quite a lot of athletes now. Like, it started with, you know, only a handful of athletes could make a living off it, but due to the social media presence, athletes now can manage to, you know, to pull some more sponsorships and whatnot. It's still not with a lot of like great brands, which still like, yeah, which is why I also focus a lot on developing my business on the side, because I just really don't want to take money to take money and then, you know, do commercials for a brand I absolutely don't believe in, or there's no scientific studies backing it up, or yeah, products I just don't like, and I just refuse to do that. Then I rather want to figure out another way to, you know, either sell some t-shirts or something if I need some support.
Yeah. No, I mean, from our perspective, we obviously knew about you before we started working with you as an ambassador role, and I think that the ethos that you adopt there in terms of the confusion within the fitness industry, obviously more specifically within the nutrition industry that we're working in, and your take on that, as you've just alluded to there, in terms of trying to almost dismantle all of the wrong side of it, and yeah, the aesthetics is a huge part of what the fitness industry is about now, and arguably social media has played a huge part in sort of the negative side of that. I mean, social media can be huge and can be very positive, but also has the negative side of things as well. So it's almost a bit of a breath of fresh air to listen to someone like yourself, where it's not about that, and it's more about the general health and well-being, but also the enjoyment of fitness and exercise. Because I think certainly within the UK, then there's a lot of a stigma around the fitness industry being too difficult or not enjoyable. But at the end of the day, it's sort of what you make of it. So yeah, hearing you say that in terms of that's why you love doing it and whatnot is certainly the attraction that we had to working with you, and sort of our ethos and our sort of morals on the situation running parallel with each other.
And that's also, I mean, not to plug you guys completely in this interview, but like, I was ordering your supplements for I think 2 years, and that was the only company I wanted to work with. I tried different companies, but the problem was that a lot of the companies weren't verified by Verified Sports, and you couldn't get all in one place. Some of the formulas weren't really very good in terms of like getting enough of the different things. It was just, yeah, a lot of, it's not like crap products, but you know, where there's just not enough of each of the different, like either vitamins or stuff like that. And I was super happy with the products, and I did not care what it cost or whatever, because it's stuff you put in your body. It's, you know, and that was just super important. And there were so many athletes also getting taken for drugs in CrossFit all of a sudden. And even though there's so many people who say, you know, yeah, they took it, but all the athletes, they told the same story. And it was literally like, I had no idea this thing I'm taking for, it doesn't say on any of the products that I'm taking. Yeah. You know, if every athlete comes with that story, I honestly do believe it. Like, why would you? And some of the supplements, you know, the stuff, drugs that taken were just useless. Like, it wasn't enough to even make them fitter or better. So, and that's just a worrying for the supplement business. And I also think the fact that there's just a million supplement companies says something about that it's perhaps a little bit too easy to enter that business, maybe because the barrier of entry is not as high, perhaps because the quality is not as high, and that's why it's nice to work with a company that actually takes themselves very serious and focus on proper quality, and has all the products in one place, and they're all verified sports accepted, and I think that's just something honestly I couldn't find before. And also my nutritionist also recommended it, and yeah, it was just that's why I actually also reached out to you guys and saw if there would be potential partnership, simply because I know that many athletes in the sport, they're taking a lot of crap, and it would be nice if you could get all in one place, and I'm just super happy that we start working together from there.
Yeah, no, likewise, and it's been great so far. And obviously, the more that we can support you, then obviously that's what we want to do. You mentioned then obviously working with a nutritionist. What's a typical sort of day in terms of your nutrition intake? Not obviously just supplements, but obviously with us being more of a food first approach company and the way we run things. How's that for you, especially when you're doing sort of heavier loading days for training and things like that? What does your nutrition look like, and how much of a pivotal role does that play, obviously in the lead up and in your training?
Nutrition and supplements are like probably like the highest priority, because if those don't work, like I've had quite some gut issues before, not like something serious, just I'll be working out and throwing up after, and I always thought I was in bad shape, and I was just like, oh, maybe I'm pushing harder than the others, but every time I was just puking and not feeling well and feeling dizzy and just like, not recovering properly and stuff like that. And also the product, I always thought it was normal that I would feel just pretty sick afterwards. I thought, like I've been taking protein shakes since I was like 15 years old. I thought it was just like, of course you're supposed to feel like crap after a protein shake. But but that changed. So I mean, I eat around 4,000 calories a day. It is primarily through foods. In my breakfast, I have like these overnight oats, where I do put like the Nutrition X protein powder in with creatine and beta alanine, and then that's like my first meal. That has like oats, blueberries, almonds, the protein powder, the beta alanine, the creatine, and then has almond milk in, and this kind of soaks in overnight to make it easy digestible in the morning.
Yeah.
I have a cup of coffee, then I have my first session. After that, I have 2 bagels with 4 eggs and jam on. Not on the same. Jam on too. Yeah. Then after that, depending if I have 2 or 3 sessions, I'll either train again or I'll have lunch, which will be kind of varies from week to week, but it's also all like based on a bit of macronutrients and how digestive that meal is. And it has to be a light meal. So often it's like salmon with pasta and a little bit of like light vegetables that I can digest fairly quickly before doing a second session.
Yeah.
Then after that, I'll have the same meal as I had before that session. And then I'll have my shake, which again is like protein, creatine, beta alanine, and the carb. It's the all-in-one from Nutrition X. And then I have dinner, and with my dinner, that varies, but that's quite a large meal. Like that would be my largest meal of the day, and I try to really push myself to get enough calories in, and I'll have the collagen shot, one of the newer products you guys added. I've had some like elbow injuries in the past, and I just know that it's super important that I get that to make sure my ligaments and tendons are in good condition. And then I'll have dessert, which is typically Greek yogurt with some oats and berries and dates. And then I'll have my like supplements, which is like omega-3s and multivitamin.
Yeah.
That's like a typical day. I have like luckily a really good appetite. I know a lot of people really struggle with like eating a lot, and you see that especially at competitions. Like most people are just fueled by protein bars and Nocos, and I've just yeah, I've always been good at eating. So that's I see that's a strength. And then of course leading up to competition, it's just even more important. Like there's no guessing around, and I add like beetroot shots and whatever, like all the small things, because I know all those things count, and it's a very advanced sport already, but it's also still a very new sport, and there's a lot of I won't say people don't take it serious. I think one thing people in CrossFit they do better than most is that they train absolutely like beasts, and they can push themselves so much, and they can do it multiple times a day. But I do think there's definitely something to win in the other hours. Like there's perhaps a lack of recovery protocols and supplement intake and just general nutrition, and I think those things will really make a difference, and that's why we're also seeing the level constantly stepping up, and I think there's still so much potential for the sport to advance and get better.
Yeah. And so with your training, you were mentioning then, so it varies in terms of a couple of sessions or 2 or 3 sessions a day. What's that training like? Are they sort of, obviously they'll peter and change around what they are, but you've obviously got to keep it enjoyable and excitable for you to do that, because it must be mentally tough, or not tough, but you've got to be driven as you are to then be putting your body through as much as you are doing.
Yeah, like a typical training week is that I train 6 days and I have 1 day off.
Yeah.
I have long periods where I didn't take any days off when I was under another coach, and it just broke me a little bit in the end, both physically and mentally. And I do think I need that like day just to. I mean, the amount of quality sessions was basically just better when I took 1 day off compared to when I didn't take it off.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I count it. I count as many quality sessions weekly as I can, and with the system of having 1 day off on Sunday has been the best system. So I do like 2 to 3 sessions from Monday to Saturday. Sometimes it's 3. If it's 3, then it's shorter sessions. And like for example, when I'm in competition season, like I'm going into now, it will most often be 3 sessions, because on a competition day I would have 3 workouts, and it just allows me also to get more meals in, and it allows just for better intensity. But typically in the morning it's conditioning. I always start with like mobility and movement work, and then I have like some aerobic capacity work for 45 to 60 minutes. And then in the afternoon, it will typically be my strength, weightlifting, and gymnastics. And then I'll have also some metcons afterwards. So the second session is like the main session, and the morning session is always, or most often, just conditioning. It's also easiest, like if you wake up in the morning, you're feeling a bit beat up from the day before and you're sore, I find it more difficult to load up to back squat 200 at 9 a.m. in the morning versus, sit on a bike for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
It just sets the tone nicer for the day. So that's the system that I like to use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of element of the training that you prefer? Is it more the conditioning or the strength training, or does it just sort of vary in enjoying all of it?
To be honest, I try to not really have any emotions about it. Like I know it sounds just like a bit dumb, but I don't really care. Like I don't care what it is, because I know I need to be good at all of it.
Yeah.
I don't really connect any feelings with whether I like that more than the other. I like getting better, and that's the only measurement thing I use. And then whether it's strength or conditioning or gymnastics, it doesn't really matter. It probably also doesn't really matter because I've never really been excellent in any of them. So, I don't have a background where I'm like massively strong or great at gymnastics or big engine. I've just been pretty average at it all. So it seems like everything has been rising at the same level. So I kind of enjoy all of the things equally.
Yeah. So there's no favorites as to a specific exercise that you're doing whilst you're competing. Nothing that you're then looking forward to doing.
No, honestly, that would make me nervous to start thinking about that. I would prefer to not have any preferences, because then when this sport is so unknown, I'm about to go into a 6-month season and I have no clue what's coming.
Yeah.
Like I don't know the combinations. I don't know if it's gonna be heavy, light, medium weights. I don't know if it's going to be 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes. I don't know if it's going to be more gymnastics or more weightlifting. So when you don't have a preference, then it's also just much less nerves because you just don't care. Like, it's just I think this is also just a general like athlete thing. Now I'm not a big athlete, but if you listen to Michael Phelps and Tiger Woods, I think like one of the things they always talk about, and I don't know if this is a good thing, but it's something that most of the top guys have in common, and that's they're very good at packing away feelings and putting to the side and just getting the work done. And the more they think about it, whether they like doing it or not, the worse it is for their career. And that's also why some coaches, they say that some of the best athletes are often the ones with the least brain because they don't really think about it.
Yeah.
The athletes that think too much, they also question a lot of things. And I do question a lot of things, but I try to still just not have that side of me that just, do you like it? It's irrelevant. I like getting better, and I have ambitions to make it to the top of the sport. So as long as I of course I enjoy it, but I try not to have any preferences.
Yeah, I think that the one thing which is certainly standing out for me listening to you is the is your mindset, is your positive thinking, is the way that you seem so tunnel vision in the sense of you've got a goal and you'll do anything that it takes to achieve that. And from my background within professional football, psychology and the mindset was certainly something that played a big part in that. Is there that opportunity to explore that within CrossFit for everybody, or is that something that you feel as though you've clearly got that's your mindset, that's more than likely come from your upbringing, obviously from as we discussed before, obviously the events with your brother and your sister, is that readily available within CrossFit for people to access the psychological side of things and being so driven to do what you need to do?
I think a lot of people just have it naturally. I don't really know what the resources are out there for people actually getting guidance. I think there's a lot of people looking for it. And that's why they hire like individualized coaches, and they can have a bit more, communication. But, there's a bunch of books that you could read, but it still doesn't give you the answer to all these books. Like, you can watch a lot of sports documentaries, but you kind of have to be able to take that into your own life, and it's not as easy, especially if you don't have like a sports background where you already come from something where there was a coach or you were super driven, or because the fact is just most people don't really get it. They don't really get why you would want to do something so hard so much and with so little money involved and those kind of things. So I do think there is a missing link there, and it's difficult. Like, and it's the mindset. It's, I think, always in elite sports. Like, look at NBA. Like, they're all the same height. They're all the same weight. They all have same strength. Like, at least it's very balanced. Like NFL and those kind of things. But it's the headspace that just makes a difference. The athletes that can push extra and want to do extra, and just geeky about getting better and keep developing. But I still think in CrossFit, I mean, there's a lot of great coaches out there and a lot of great companies that are growing, but I think still, as it is a new sport, like, it's still not, we don't have that 45 or 50-year-old coach sitting in the chair who can tell stories about CrossFit games in the 90s, or have that yet. So there is like some new coaches coming from other sports that have, like my former coach, he came from rugby and triathlon, and he taught me like so much from those sports. And but I don't think there's a lot of coaches out there that are doing that yet. But in the future.
Yeah, and with obviously what you're doing, then maybe that'll be you looking back at this interview, and times have changed in terms of having the experience with it being obviously a relatively young sport to where it is then. You can obviously then pass on your experience to those that are coming and training with you.
Yeah, hopefully. And I think that's also one thing that's only the missing link. Like, some of those guys who can deliver the some of the things that I told you about before, but they have no experience in the sport. So like, and then it's a bit tricky, you know, if you don't really know how it feels to train like 2-3 times a day and in such a complicated sport, you know, like it's not just running and swimming and biking, you know, like
Yeah.
like you'll be doing 100 deadlifts at 180 in the morning, and then you do 300 pull-ups and then 600 at something else, and like the volume, and it's a different level, and it's so compound. There's so much load straight on the spine, and there's so many things we still don't know, like, yeah, can you keep going at that pace, like with those loads, or do you need to have a different approach? And if you haven't felt that on your body, I just definitely find it difficult to teach someone or to program for someone.
Yeah. And with the sport, it may sound like a bit of a silly question, because obviously you're competing by yourself and you're training, and a lot of the time, obviously, with the mentality behind it, it's you against yourself. It's you pushing yourself further to do that bit more. Is it a very individual sport, or is there obviously elements of team sport because you're training with other people, and do you feel as though you'll push yourself that little bit more if you've got someone training with you, obviously in your case in the home gym that you've built, or is it more it doesn't really matter to you and you can just do the same, you can put in the same intensity and the same sort of effort whether you're by yourself or competing against X amount of people?
I think it's very individual, but like for me myself, I am just best alone. Like at competitions, my main focus is always to just have my own focus, like on doing what I need to do. And that's always when I get the best result. As soon as I look right and left, and maybe one day, like, you know, the best in the sport, he can look right and left because he's ahead of people.
Yeah.
But I'm just not at that stage yet. Like, and for me, it's just always pushing myself alone. That's the best. I have like training partners that I meet up with it once in a while, once a week. But I have to be honest, it often distracts me more than it helps me.
Yeah.
Because if I'm beating someone by X amount, then I have a harder time pushing further because I know they won't catch me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. But when I'm alone, I fear the worst. I have all these competitors in my head, and that's one thing I've always had, and this is maybe not the most charming thing, but but I do tend to like not make stories up about the others, but that fuels me, you know. If I see someone do something and post about it, it almost makes me think, oh, they think I can't do that.
Yeah.
And that can just fire me up like nothing else. And it sounds a bit bad, and I always thought that it was an issue, but my sister, she studies psychology, and I've been trying to read a lot about different athletes from different sports, and there's kind of tendency that some athletes they are very fueled by having maybe a little bit of chip on the shoulder and somebody saying, oh, you don't think I can do that? Let me show you. And then they can just turn up the gears. And I have that a little bit, and probably also because not a lot of people take me serious, or I maybe would like to think that they don't. And then that just makes me, kind of fired up. I think I've always been known as just a very kind and, sweet boy. You know, I always sit first row. I always have my shirt tucked in my pants, and so I think a lot of people just never really thought that I could be perhaps scary, but I have that thing inside of me that I just can get really aggressive about. Like, if you don't think I can do that, like, I'm going to show you. I'm not going to stop. Like, I can do this for the next 10 years to achieve one goal, and I won't stop.
Yeah.
So in regards to that, in regards to training alone, I think that works well for me. It's fine when there's others as well, but it's definitely not a necessary thing. And that's also why I entered the sport, because I came from team sports and I played American football, and one of the issues was that, you know, we play a game on Sunday and we're trying to be the best team, and half the team is out drinking in the weekend. Like, that for me just doesn't work.
Yeah.
that was getting worse and worse the older I got. And so CrossFit, I only rely on myself, and that's much easier.
Yeah.
Because you set yourself to a standard, and you could just have to look yourself in the mirror, and that's it.
Yeah. No one else to point the finger at, no one else to blame. It's all down to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like I said before, I think that's been the biggest thing for me having this conversation with you is there is certainly an element of obviously very intelligent guy and a pleasant guy to speak to and everything that comes with that, but you can really get that feeling of that inner drive and that inner resilience to not only prove other people wrong, as you've mentioned to there, in terms of if they potentially doubt you or whatever it may be, but also to prove yourself right in the sense of backing your own ability, which is, as you said, you can see that on sports documentaries. You see it about the greatest athletes that there have been. They have that something different within them where it's an unstoppable force when they get going. That's what it is. So. I think it's massively applaudable that you've got that, and you can certainly see the like I said, the drive and the will to win and to prove yourself right in the backing that you've got of yourself is brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, I of course just hope that that I can achieve my goals and whatever it might be. But I think the biggest goal is just doing my best and just hoping that will take me to where I need to be and where I deserve to be. And just so many unknowables, and life can happen. But yeah, but I just definitely hope that it'll be a good season and yeah, many good years to come. So let's see.
Yeah, no, of course, and as you said, obviously the season's only around the corner from you now, and you'll be straight back into it. Is COVID going to play a part in that? Is there going to be a change this year to what there would have been in previous years?
It is a new season format, but it's a season format they seem to want to stick with. I mean, the first stage and the second stage is going to be online regardless COVID or no COVID. The semifinals would ideally be a in-person competition.
Yeah.
That would be like mid-June. But they are going to pull through regardless if COVID is still a big thing by then. So then semifinals will also be online.
Yeah.
And then for the finale, depending on how bad COVID is, then either they will do like a first stage online, then a second stage just for a few athletes. But they're going to pull through this season. They also did that last year, despite everything. So they are prepared with backup plans and stuff. And it is a bit different, but people are adaptable. You have to be in sports. Like,
yeah,
get injured all the time and things don't work out your way. So if you're not able to adapt constantly, you're just never really gonna be that good in sports.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really play a big impact.
Yeah. Well, I think a perfect way to wrap up in terms of obviously wishing you the best of luck with the season. We're obviously going to be following and supporting as much as we possibly can. Obviously wishing you all the best and yeah, it's been a pleasure to speak to you and really delve into like I said, your mindset, your will to win, and just getting to know you that little bit more. So thank you obviously for joining us for this call, and I'm sure we'll be keeping tabs on how you're getting on, and hopefully we can have another one of these conversations afterwards, and you've achieved that next step and you can keep progressing.
100%, and it's all my pleasure, and I'm super happy that you guys support me and that we managed to create a good partnership, and I really hope that it can be a long-term thing, and that as I grow and our partnership can continue to be the same. And I'm just super happy for the support you guys have given me. So
yeah, no problem. Well, thanks for joining us. Cheers, André.
Thank you.
Thanks.